This is my first iPad Pro. I've been using it pretty much daily now for the past 6 months. But what is it that keeps me coming back to it? What is it that I found so addictive about this iPad Pro? Maybe this video is very timely. It's coming up to the holiday season, it's Christmas, and maybe all year you've been thinking of giving yourself a treat and buying yourself an M4 iPad Pro. Well, in this video, hopefully, I'll help you make up your mind as to whether it's for you and whether it would fit into your life. My name's David and I make videos about Apple gear, all Apple gear, every single week, purely because I sit here using it all day long and I love talking to you guys about it. As I mentioned, this is my first ever iPad Pro. And when I bought it in the summer, I wasn't sure I was going to like it. I wasn't sure if I was even going to keep it. As it turned out, I got on with the iPad pretty well. There was a learning curve. Why? Well, because I'm a Mac user. So I had to come from using Mac OS to iPad OS. And I'd heard all this negativity about iPad OS and how bad it was. And you know what? It actually isn't that bad. It's not meant to be Mac OS. It's a different device. It's got a touch screen, so it's going to be different. You just know that when you reach for the iPad, it's going to be a different kind of work. We'll cover a little bit more about the OS a little bit later on. But first of all, just in case you are sitting on the fence, thinking of buying one of these for yourself or for somebody over Christmas, let's just go through some of the basics and let's start off with design. The first thing you're going to notice when you get your iPad Pro out of the box is it's thin. Nothing can prepare you for how thin it is. It's only 5mm thick. It's thinner than my iPhone. It's thinner than the Apple Pencil Pro when you put that on top. It is seriously thin. How Apple have effectively managed to fit a full computer into a pane of glass is beyond me. It is gorgeous. And you know what Apple do better than any other company out there? They make the touching, the tactile quality of their products so special. When I get this out of the case, and that's something I need to do more often, it lives in that case too much. When I get it out and hold it and just feel how lovely the iPad is, it is gorgeous. And Apple are masters at that. This year, the bezels are really, really slim. They're not quite edge to edge, but near enough. And the other thing I really love about this is Face ID. The sooner we can get rid of Touch ID, the better. The Face ID on this is really snappy and quick, and it's just, again, a joy to use. The display on this thing is, without a doubt, its USP. It is the best panel that I've ever used. It spoils you for any other display that you're going to look at that day, I promise you. It's bright. In fact, it's so bright, and this is coming from somebody that has his iPhone at max brightness virtually all the time. It's so bright, I often have to turn it down. Just putting some figures on there for you. It goes up to 1,000 nits of SDR brightness, which for an OLED panel is, again, just genius, how they've managed to do that. And in HDR, it goes up to 1,600. But all you need to know is it is bright. It's brighter than the iPhone. It's brighter than the Macs. And the iPad mini could take a lesson from it. I mentioned that in a video recently. These devices are the kind of thing you're going to take out from home. You're going to maybe use them at airports, on planes, on trains. So you need something that's bright, and the iPad won't let you down. The iPad Pro won't let you down. It's got Pro Motion, of course, but it's intelligent as well. It goes all the way from 10 Hertz up to 120 Hertz refresh rate. It just intelligently knows what you're looking at, and it will adapt itself accordingly. It is super, super clever how it does it. Now, the size I picked up was the 13-inch M4 iPad Pro. Would I do it again? I'm not sure. I love large displays. I've got the 16 Pro Max. I've got the 15-inch MacBook Air. I've got the 27-inch Studio display. I like big displays. But the thing is, with the iPad Pro, it is a mobile device. It's always going to be a mobile device. And that 13-inch version of the M4 iPad Pro comes with a hefty lot of weight to it. It is a heavy boy. It's not much difference to carry around a MacBook Pro. And I mentioned in last week's video that that's quite prohibitive. So yes, I love the screen size. I really do. But would I don't know if I would go for 13-inch again. I might go for 11 just to make it that bit more portable. That is a personal thing. Go and check it in store. I just wanted to mention to you, it is a considerable weight. Now, when I first bought my iPad back in the summer, I bought it with nano texture on. I wanted to see what it was about. I took it back. It wasn't for me. But let me just say here, it is brilliant at what it does. If you want a texture on there that's going to flatten off the display so there's virtually no reflections, nano texture did it brilliantly. It just wasn't for me. The downside of it is it does make everything a little bit more muted on the colors. And I am not an artist that's using a pencil and touching the screen. I'm not using it out in bright conditions most of the time. I'm not using it in outdoor environments. So for me, the nano texture wasn't something that was particularly important. It's got an anti-reflective coating on there anyway, which doesn't do a bad job. And it's got something called a fingerprint resistant oleophobic coating on there. In English, it means it doesn't smudge quite as much as it used to. It's also got this wide P3 calagma, which means basically that you're going to get deeper colors. You're going to get deeper primary colors and richer secondary colors as well. But the display second to none, definitely one of the best things that the iPad Pro has got. People don't mention the speakers often enough on the M4 iPad Pro. You've got 4 of them on there. Are they as good as the MacBook Pro? No, not quite. Are they as good as the MacBook Air? Not quite. But for something so thin, and don't forget the basics you need to understand about speaker engineering is you need space, you need air. That's what makes them sound good. The fact they've got 4 speakers in here that actually don't sound offensive, and that's not a put down, they sound good. If you're just sitting at a desk watching something on Apple TV, listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, listening to some music while you're working, they are fine. They are not offensive. They're not screechy. A little bit thin, a little bit lacking in bass, but they're more than good enough to, as I say, not be offensive. Also, the cameras. If you're the sort of person that works for a company, say, that you're on expenses and you have to keep a lot of receipts, scanning receipts and any kind of documentation on here is brilliant. It does such a good job of getting it shadow-free and almost crease-free as well. So if that's the kind of thing that you have to do on a regular basis, honestly, the cameras on here are one of the reasons I keep coming back to it. It is just so convenient to use. And also, of course, the iPad, no, it's not going to replace my Mac, but it fits beautifully into my ecosystem with universal control, AirDrop, and Sidecar. And if you're one of those people that are enjoying these weekly videos that I put out on the channel, you know what you can really help me do to grow? It's simple and it's free, and you know what I'm going to say, subscribe. It takes seconds. While you're doing it, turn on notifications as well, just to make sure you know the moment I upload a video, you get notified and are one of the first to know. There's something a little bit odd about me, you know. With my iPhone 16 Pro Max, I never put it in a case. I love touching it too much. I love the way it feels. I've already mentioned how much I enjoy using this iPad when it's out of its case, but it's rarely out of its case. And why is that? Simply because I wouldn't think of buying an iPad Pro without getting a case. It's weird, isn't it? They just fit together perfectly. Now look, this Magic Keyboard is ridiculously expensive. I can't hide away from the fact that it's stupidly expensive. It's £350, but it kind of makes the iPad. To use an iPad Pro without this Magic Keyboard would take away its strengths. It really would. When it first came out in 2020, the Magic Keyboard, it kind of changed people's perceptions of what an iPad was and how seriously it could be taken. And of all the iPads out there, it's the iPad Pro that I think needs it the most. I haven't used a third-party keyboard. I don't see the point in doing it. I don't think it can get any better than this Magic Keyboard. It's got that metal feel to it. It feels premium. It feels pretty much like a MacBook. The trackpad, bigger this year, I believe, than the previous one. It's got really good haptic feedback. It's almost as if it's an actual proper trackpad that's kicking back at you. It's beautifully balanced. And of course, you've got those function keys. You've heard about those function keys all the time. I'm not going to bore you with all the details, but just to say, of all those function keys we've got on there, the escape key, the volume key, and the brightness key are the ones that are really handy just to have there at the touch of a button. It is such a comfortable keyboard to use. The one downside of the case is that kind of rubberized feeling. It feels lovely. I like the way it feels in the hand, but it marks easily. Quick ninja tip, if you're looking to clean it off, a microfiber cloth does a really good job. Now, along with the Magic Keyboard, of course, the other accessory that you're almost certainly going to get is a pencil. I got the Pencil Pro. Now, I've already mentioned, I am no artist. I don't get the most out of the Pencil Pro. I really don't. But I tell you what I do use an awful lot is just for taking notes. Again, say you work for a company that sends you on a lot of conferences or you're a lot of keynote speeches, rather than sitting there clackety-clack on a keyboard to make notes. And there's also something good about getting back to taking notes sometimes, actually just handwriting. It feels quite cathartic. That's when I use the Pencil Pro the most. It's really good just for using Apple Notes and literally taking notes. There's virtually no lag when you're on the screen. I don't use any kind of screen protector on here. Now, it could do with a little bit more drag on it to make it more of a paper feel, but I just happen to love the display so much, I don't want anything on there that's going to take away from that sensation of color that I get from using it. But it's perfectly usable. It's not like it slides across it. I've left the gestures turned on, but I have turned the sensitivity up, down, made them less sensitive, whichever way you want to put it. I love the fact that I can select the eraser or select pen types, nib types. It's useful, but I just found it was too sensitive with the setting that it was originally on when I got the iPad. Also, pencils now, it's a much simpler selection. You've just got the Pencil Pro that I've got, which is £129, or the USB-C pencil, which is £79. Now, you're probably only going to buy the pencil once. £50, I'm not saying it's a drop in the ocean, but that extra £50, go on the website, have a look at the difference in functionality and see which one's for you. But I think you do need, again, you need a Pencil Pro or a pencil of some kind to make this iPad really come to life. The keyboard and the pencil, unfortunately, expensive accessories, but they just make it complete. And multitasking. Of course, I've got to talk about multitasking. It's an iPad. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds about multitasking. People seem to get very uptight about it. It does what it needs to do for me. It's one of those things you either work around and understand it or you're going to hate it. And probably if you're a hater, you're never going to be turned around on it. And you're probably the same person who wants Mac OS on the iPad as well. Now, again, it comes back to this issue that it's not Mac OS. So there is always going to be a different way of working. Stage Manager, of course, was one of the efforts that Apple made to bring multitasking to the iPad better. I've used it. I'm not particularly keen on it. With Stage Manager, you can group apps for specific tasks and you can overlap and resize windows, but only kind of where Apple wants them. I happen to prefer using Slide Over and Split View. I find it's a neater way of working. It suits my workflow better. And certainly the moment I hook it up to the studio display, then it opens up a whole new world for me. I've got a gorgeous display in front of me, the studio display, and you all know what I think about the studio display. Then you've got a really good workflow environment, a serious workstation in front of you. And multitasking is just another term for getting things done. And as far as I'm concerned, you can get things done on an iPad. Just going back to the Pencil Pro a moment and talking about multitasking, one thing I wish we could do is use the Pencil much like a stylus on a Samsung phone on our iPhones. Quite often I'm sitting here in my studio with the phone in front of me, I've got the pencil, or I'm using universal control across the Macs. It'd be lovely just to be able to take that pencil or the mouse and use universal control or the pencil on the iPhone as well. I'm no technician. I don't know if it's possible. I'm just saying from a user point of view, when you're sitting in the Apple ecosystem, it would be lovely if we could use some kind of universal control or pencil on the phone as well. Just saying. The iPad has taken a little while to find its niche, to find what its strengths are, like Apple Watch did. But I think the making of iPad actually is going to be Apple Silicon because you can just get so much done with it. We've seen in the last year that Apple has brought Final Cut and Logic to the iPad. And these aren't just morphed straight from the Mac, they are designed for the iPad. Now, are they perfect? No. But do they work on the iPad? I would argue yes. You're not necessarily going to want to do heavy editing on the iPad, but you can. A few weeks ago, I edited an entire video, start to finish, on the iPad. Back then, plugins weren't available, but now MOTIONVFX have got some plugins available for iPad. So we are moving in the right direction, and that's all because of Apple Silicon. Don't forget also, Apple has just bought Pixelmator, which shows they're serious about getting into the creative field. I mean, they always have been, but clearly I think now they see the iPad and what it's capable of with Apple Silicon. Now, of course, Apple Intelligence is kind of loosely stuttering into life. We've got some things, but at the moment, certainly here in the UK, the only real features I've got are summaries on email, which are a pain. The emojis don't interest me at all. And we've got the cleanup tool in Photos, which works pretty well when I've used it. But AI is coming. We know that. Whatever Apple has got in mind, these iPads Pros with Apple Silicon are going to be future-proof. Whatever Apple throws at it, you know that if you spend a lot of money on it now, you're set for the future. So if you're somebody that wants to embrace AI and use AI in whatever it is you do for a hobby or for a job, buying the iPad Pro, you know you're set for the future. As I mentioned at the start of the video, when I bought the iPad, I'd heard so many bad things about it. I was almost of the mindset that I was going to take it back. I didn't think I'd enjoy it. Surely a Mac user wouldn't enjoy an iPad. I'd heard that. iPad OS sucks. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't. Now, it's been on my desk for 6 months and I keep coming back to it. There are things that I'd like to see added to the iPad. For instance, multi-user login would probably be top of the list. And if they could somehow integrate the Files app a little bit more natively into the OS, that'd be handy. I wasn't aware how important the Files app is in iPad Live, but if you want to, say, save an attachment from an email and forward it on to somebody else, it's the Files app you're going to need. And it's a little bit clunky to move around. The way you can attach external SSDs to it via the USB-C port, I do it all the time. It's really quick and it works. But there's just a few things I would like to see them just improve on to make iPad Live that little bit better. But on the whole, the iPad is a pretty complete device. You pack it up in one small case and you've got the keyboard, you've got a pencil, you've got the trackpad, you've got the best display going, and you have got cameras. Okay, we're not all going to be that person taking pictures out with the cameras, but as I say, they double up into being a great way of just running your business as well. So what is it that keeps me coming back to the iPad? It is that it's just so compact, so easy to carry around with you and to get so much done on. And of course, it fits in to the ecosystem beautifully as well. Earlier today, I was recording a podcast. So what I do is I use Sidecar. That way I can put the session on the iPad, rest the iPad on a teleprompter in front of the camera, and I'm looking at the guests on the iPad. It's small little things that just make for a quality of life improvement. Tiny little things that people don't talk about with iPad there that just make things somehow better. Is it ever going to replace my Mac? No, I never expected it to, but equally, I didn't expect to be using it as much as I am. The great thing about the iPad Pro is it doubles up. When I get the mini out, I know that the day's work's over and I'm purely kicking back and enjoying myself. And there's nothing wrong with that. But with the iPad Pro, if I've got that to there, I know that I can do some work on it. I know that I can watch some content on it. I know I can do some content creation on it as well. It just gives me so many options and I cannot rave about that display enough. And if you're just doing average stuff, it's got day life battery. It will see you through a day easily. Honestly, this thing has really surprised me just how easy it is to use. So is it replaced my Mac? No, but is it a great add-on to have in the Apple ecosystem? Absolutely, yes. Once you've started using an iPad, and particularly the M4 iPad Pro, which gives you the best of both worlds, relaxation and content creation, kicking back and being productive, it's got it all. It really has. A few weeks ago, I spoke about my experiences with the iPad mini. It's on screen now, and if you've enjoyed this video, there's a good chance you might enjoy that one too.